put your name in here and your county real quick before I close the window. I need to turn in a list of participants. It's our sign-in sheet, basically. I'm going to get rid of some of these other windows. It looks like we've got quite a few people that haven't been in the poultry project before, and that's really what the presentation is geared for, although a lot of people that have been in it 1 or 2 years do take and get some information from this. Also, I'm Richard Andre. I'm the superintendent here in Moore County, and I've been raising poultry for 40 some years. I've been in 4-H, involved with 4-H for about 35 years, something like that. So I've been around for a while. It's good to see that we've got a lot of newcomers. I usually do this presentation in our own county, but half the time it gets canceled this time of year because of the weather and stuff. So I thought, well, let's give this a try and see how it works on doing it on a webinar type thing. I almost didn't get here today. My starter on my truck decided to go out last night, so I was going to do this from home. Then the internet connection was down at home, so we started the truck this morning, and we've got it running out in the parking lot, so we can go back home. I've got Katrina in the other room. You've probably been seeing her. She's been busy in the other room. She's checking and making sure everything's working for us, and I think it is. The sound is going to vary depending on how good your internet connection is. I'm sorry about that, but that's just kind of the way things are. Some of you are going to get really good sound. Some of you are going to get kind of crappy sound. It's one of the wonders of technology. This is going to be recorded, hopefully. Speaking of that, let me make sure that I am recording this meeting. Okay, and it is recording, hopefully. And Katrina's making a backup copy, so hopefully that will be available to you sometime here in the near future. I'll put up a place where you can check for the web address. I'll probably post it on our farm Facebook account here tonight, so you know where you can find it. And then I'll have our extension office put out where it's located to everybody after that. Okay, I think we'll get started. We're a little past 9:30, and hopefully everybody's gotten connected. Most of you replied that you had sound, so hopefully we're okay. It's always one of the things of doing this. Okay, let me go ahead and hide that. Okay, we should have a clear screen, and we should be ready to go. All right, I'll try to watch the chat and answer questions as we go. Katrina's going to kind of monitor them for me in the other room in case I miss some and that need to be answered. So be patient. There's quite a few people on here. I was kind of surprised. I'm happy that there's this many that are on here, but I'm a little surprised at how many have showed up, but it's great. All right, let's go ahead and get started. First off, this is me, a little bit about me, who I am. I'm Vice President of the Minnesota State Poultry Association. I've been judging a bunch of poultry shows. I'm an instructor here at Riverland Community College, and I'd like to thank Riverland for allowing us to use this system in order to take and present this today. All right, so let's get started. One of the reasons for this presentation is there are so many options in the poultry project. We have chickens, ducks, geese, turkeys, guineas, pigeons, and doves, which come out to a total of 19 different classes that you could possibly take to the fair. In some counties, you can take 20. There's also what they call a show and hobby class. Some counties have that, which is basically anything with feathers can be shown. So there's a lot of different choices out there, and that's what we're going to go through today, is a lot of these different choices, and also a little bit about how to raise and how to start your poultry project. There are a couple files. You'll see them over there on the right-hand side, the breeders list and the intro to 4-H poultry. You may want to download those so that you have them. Intro to 4-H Poultry kind of follows this presentation, but it's in a text format. And breeders list is a list of breeders from Minnesota State Poultry Association that are willing to sell chicks or lease chicks out to 4-Hers. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Some general info. All your chickens have to be hatched after January 1st of the year of your fair. This is true except for breeding pigeons and breeding doves. They are old birds, or birds are over a year old. Chickens and turkeys need health certificates, so you have to have your health certificate when you go to the fair. And if you get your birds from a hatchery, it's a statement of origin is what you're going to get from the hatchery. And breeders too, you might get that, or you might get a copy of their polarium slip. Either one is good. If you hatch yourself, you have to get the birds blood tested by somebody that's a state tester that can do the polarium testing for you. All the birds are supposed to be banded when they're showing, and a lot of your fairs now are providing bands for you. If they don't provide bands, you can get a hold of your leader, and they will and see if they have bands. Otherwise, bands are pretty easy to find. You can search for them on the internet and get bands pretty easily. Okay, let's go on here. All right, let's start out with chickens. Chickens, breeding chickens. These are the purebreds. Okay, you show one male and two females of the same variety. Now, when we talk about chickens, we have breeds and we have varieties. So a breed is basically the profile of the chicken. Okay, so that's the outline of what the chicken would look like. The variety is the color. So we have to show a male and two females of the same variety and breed. I should have breed on there also, so that they match. That's what we do in chickens. Hatch dates, standard chickens, the earlier the better. We already have a bunch of our standard chickens hatched. Where you can get them, you get them from hatchery or a breeder. Now, hatcheries are a good place to figure out what kind of chickens you want to take and raise. That's really what they're good for, but there's two different goals between a hatchery and a breeder. A hatchery goal is to sell chicks. So they want chickens that they can reproduce very well. Okay, the breeder's goal is to take and match up what the standard of perfection calls for. The standard of perfection is what the standard breeds are judged against. It's a book from the American Poultry Association that tells you what each breed and variety is supposed to look like. So the breeder's trying to match that. That's their goal. Where a hatchery's, their main goal is reproduction. So they'll hatch chicks that tend to be in the standard birds. They tend to be a little bit smaller than what the standard calls for. They generally aren't marked as well as what a breeder would go for. So what I suggest people do is use a hatchery your first couple of years until you decide, figure out what breed that you do like to raise. And then once you've taken and found that out and decided what you kind of want to take and raise, then it's time to take and find a breeder. Okay, so then that list, the breeders list there, will take and get you some ideas where some breeders are. And if you can't find one there, you can contact somebody from the Poultry Association or myself, and we'll certainly see if we can help you find a breeder that can help you out. Now the Bantams the same way. Hatch dates there January through March. They grow a little bit faster. You can get them a little bit later in the year. Some of them are kind of slow maturing. Some of the feather leg breeds mature kind of slow, so you can get them out a little earlier. It's better. Again, from a hatchery or a breeder, it looks like I got cut off. Again, a hatchery to take and figure out what you like. And then if you get serious about it, it's time to find a breeder to take and start raising some birds. Okay. Egg production. These are hybrid chickens. Okay, and we show two females. There's two classes in the egg production class. There is a white egg layer and there's a brown egg layer. And the white egg layers, the most common, are the leghorns, hybrid leghorns. Hatch dates generally is around mid-March, 20 to 24 weeks before the fair. We like to see them just coming into full production right at the state fair. That's really what we kind of like. Chickens will start laying around 18 to 20 weeks. Give them a couple weeks to really come into production. So somewhere in that range there. And we get those from a hatchery. And the hatcheries all have a ton of selections for white egg layers. Brown egg layers, most common are the red sexlings, gold stars, ISA browns, those kind of chickens. There'll be different names for them, but they're the hybrided egg layers. That's generally what we're looking for. That's what we like most often to see in the brown egg layers. Now you can use some of the production breeds like production reds, production Orpingtons, those kind of birds, but really we're trying to mirror what industry does, and industry is using the hybrided brown egg layers, and they will outlay most of the production type birds that you have out there. So the preference is for most judges is going to go to the red sexlings, the gold stars, those kind of birds that are a little bit more hybrided up and will take and lay a little bit better. And why these birds work well is that they've been bred for egg production. The body size is about right to get a good size egg and to um, get the most eggs for the least amount of money. And that's what we're trying to do in the egg production class. Okay, so those are what we want for the egg layers. Now, people always say, well, why can't I use other chickens for egg production? Well, it's just like the other breeds. You could take and put a Hereford in a dairy class. It does give milk, but it's not going to be nearly as efficient as a Hereford would. Not a Hereford, but a Holstein would in the dairy class. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing. Uh, you know, all the chickens lay eggs, but they're not nearly as efficient as some of the others. And we're going for efficiency, what the industry is looking for. Yeah, all your birds have to be hatched the year of the fair. So, and these are some suggested dates here. Now, I've been seeing a lot of brown egg layers that are maturing at a much earlier age, I think a lot of it is how hard they're being pushed feed-wise. So you're going to have to kind of adjust. It might take you a couple years to figure out what is that peak time, because if they get too old, then they kind of lay themselves out. They lose a lot of their color, a lot of their feathers. They don't look beautiful anymore. They put all the energy into start laying eggs, and they kind of go downhill from there as far as their looks go. So we want to catch them just when they're at that peak. Okay. All right. I see there's some questions about blue egg layers and that kind of stuff. Really, a blue egg layer would be considered a brown egg layer. But again, our classes are mirroring industry. Okay, so that's why we look for these particular breeds in the egg production class. Now, I know that a lot of home producers, they like to have some of those other breeds and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the fact is, when it comes to judging, we're looking for what industry takes and does. So that's your egg laying class. Now your meat chickens, these are hybrids also. They're Cornish Rock Cross. We show either two males or two females. We can't have one of each. They got to be both the same. We show two males or two females. Their Cornish Rock Cross hatch 6 to 8 weeks before the fair. They grow very quickly. I believe right now, last I talked to somebody that worked for Jenny O, and I think their goal was 42 days to have the chicken from hatched to being processed. That's not very long. Actually, I think it was even shorter than that. I think it was 35 days. I think 42 days was the old one. I think it's 35 days now. It's a very short period of time anyway. So what we want is hatch 6 to 8 weeks before the fair, depending on when your fair is. If you have a late fair that's close to the state fair, you can get away with maybe having them just a tiny bit small at your county fair. And later on, and then they'll be maybe just about right for the state fair. But if you have an early fair, that's maybe the first part of August, in July, you probably need two batches of chicks, one for the county fair and one for the state fair. And you have to set that second batch of chicks later on so that they can be ready for the state fair. I've judged some early county fairs where I've told the kids, go home and order some chicks and get them here by the next week, and you'll be just fine for state fair. They grow that quickly, and we get those from a hatchery also. And there's numerous hatcheries around that almost all of them will carry some kind of a broiler or market chicken that is used. And now I know that we've seen some what are they? Red Rockets, I believe. Some of those are kind of around. That's kind of a tough one. It's kind of nice to have something different, but they don't seem to quite grow as quickly as the Cornish rocks, and they have a hard time competing um, with them at the county fair. There's nothing wrong with raising them. I think they're great. If we had a roaster class, I wish we had a roaster class in Minnesota. They'd be a nice roaster chicken because they take a little longer to grow and would be there. I tend to myself, I prefer seeing the females showing most of the time in the market class. I think they show better. They tend to finish out a little bit better. They tend to be a little bit better on the legs. I'm just trying to catch a few of these questions that are going by. They go by pretty fast. Um, the but I don't, if there's a good set of males, there's nothing wrong with showing a good set of males. Uh, with the females, I just tend to think a lot of times they seem to be a little bit showier. One of the big things with the market chickens is keeping them clean. Um, they always like to kind of sit down. That's one of the things you want to look for. You want birds that got some decent legs under them so they can stand up. And females tend to do that a little bit better than males. They don't get quite as big, quite as fast. But uh, anyway, that's the market chickens. Okay. Ducks. We have purebred ducks. Same as the purebred chickens. You show one male and two females of the same variety and breed. Uh, Hatch them. They can be hatched. Ducks grow a little bit faster than chickens do. Uh, so you hatch them in March through May, probably. Same way with the bantams. They're standard, and there's bantam ducks. They're two separate classes, just like in the chickens. Get them from a hatchery or breeder. It's a little tougher to get these from a breeder probably than the chickens. There's not as many people working with the waterfowl, but there are still some good waterfowl breeders around. And there's some on that breeder sheet too. Uh, but the waterfowl it's a great thing to take and get into. The competition's probably not quite as stiff in ducks. There's not as many people raising ducks. The bantam ducks, it's a little tougher to find those. You don't usually find them from hatcheries. Um, they're a little tougher to breed. Generally to get them, you're probably going to have to get some breeders of your own and hatch them out. You might find a breeder or two. You can get some mallards pretty easily. Tough to find call ducks from breeders that'll sell you call ducks. They're just a tough thing to hatch. We don't see a lot of bantam ducks around because they are a little bit tougher to take and hatch. Okay. Market ducks. We show two females or two males, just like in the market chickens. Pekin is probably the most common that we see, but any heavy duck will work. Again, a white duck is probably preferred, or a light colored duck. We just want size to them. If you ever eat duck, you can't have too much duck. So we want to take and have a nice big duck. A Muscovy works nice for market duck if you can get them out. That's a big problem with Muscovies. Usually you can't get them to hatch till about July, which is too late. So pecans are probably the most common that we see, and we just want a nice big duck. That's what we're really looking for. And with all of our birds, when we pick them out for shows, we want them to match. We want the birds in the pen to match the two males or the two females to look alike. That's one of the big things we look for. And again, you get these from a hatchery or a breeder. Okay, geese, breeding geese. Again, these are the purebreds. We're back to the APA standard. Same way with the breeding duck. They're going so fast, I can't. My daughter says, answer some questions. Well, by the time I look over there, half of them are gone by. So I apologize. Maybe at the end I will take and try to concentrate a little bit more on the questions that come up through. It's kind of hard to keep up with them. Okay. We'll go through all the classes, so if we haven't gotten there yet, just hang on. We'll get there. Breeding geese, we show one male, two females. Now, geese are a little bit tougher to tell what the males and the females are. Generally, what I tell people is the big one's the male, and two smaller ones are your female. Again, we want the same breed and variety being shown. Hatch date, probably as early as you can get them. And another problem with geese is getting them out early enough, March through May. You get them from a hatchery or breeder, or any of these purebred stuff. You can hatch your your own. Okay, if you want to go that way. Market geese, we show two males or two females. Again, and get those from a hatchery or breeder. There, we're looking for a nice match set and good size to them. Okay, probably the most common goose that we will see in the market class is Edmund, but we'll see all different kinds of geese in there. And personally, myself, judging, I really don't care too much about what breed we have there. You know, some of the darker breeds gonna aren't gonna take and dress out as nicely. But you know, even the lighter geese, you get a nice bird when you take and butcher them. So, um, but probably at the state fair, probably a good pen at Edmonds would probably take and be the most competitive birds. They're looking for a nice big size bird. Okay. All right, let's go on to turkeys. Breeding turkeys, we're looking for the purebreds here. Now, we see a lot of people show broad-breasted bronze in the breeding turkeys. Well, really, that's not a standard breed of turkeys, and depends on the judge that you get. Like last year at the state fair, they didn't even give a champion because I believe they weren't a purebred turkeys that were up there. Turkeys are a great project. If you want to go to state fair and have an excellent chance of winning, we could certainly use some more turkeys at the state fair. I believe there's only one pen of breeding turkeys last year, and maybe 5, 6, 7 breeding our market turkeys. Not a lot. So turkeys are a great thing to get in. Again, turkeys. The tough thing with the breeding turkeys is getting them early enough. Uh, Generally, you get hatched maybe March through May. Get them from a hatchery or a breeder. And we want breeds that are recognized by the APA. That's what we want for breeding turkeys. And you can always, most counties have a standard of perfection. You can always check that, or you can check online for standard breeds that are recognized by the APA, or the American Poultry Association, and find out more information about individual breeds. Market turkeys, generally here what we see are the broad-breasted whites or the broad-breasted bronze. Whites are probably preferred, although I have seen bronze win. The white birds just tend to dress nicer. That's why they're generally preferred. Bronze or dark colored chickens, when you dress them, they will take and leave some dark marks in the skin, which is not real desirable for a table bird. But both, I've seen both win though. Generally hatch dates April, May. It used to be the biggest turkey. It used to be kind of what they were going for. Now they're looking for more of a turkey in that around that 25-pound, 30-pound range, which is more what the industry takes and uh, uh, goes for as a bird in that particular size. So and they grow very quickly. So a little bit later hatch date is just fine with the market turkeys. We don't necessarily need the 50-pound monsters anymore. A nice full 25-pound tom it will make a very nice pen for turkeys. Turkeys are also very social. So are geese. Geese are very social. They like to be around people. So uh, you wouldn't think that, but that's what they do. They do like to be around people. Okay, let's see here. All right, I'm just trying to catch up. Looks like there's some conversations going. I'm just going to keep going. I don't see an actual question right now. Guineas, um, they're fairly new. That's another one that there's not a lot of competition at the state fair. We have breeding guineas. These are the purebreds. There's 3 varieties of guineas: whites, pearls, and lavenders that are recognized. Uh, Hatch again March through May. They grow very quickly, so a little bit later hatch is fine. Get them from a hatchery or breeder. There aren't a lot of breeders of guineas, although we do have probably the top guinea breeder in the United States, lives up here in Owatonna, Craig Thorson. Um, he's got a lot of guineas. Again, we're looking for purebreds. We show one male and two females of the same variety. Okay. Uh, Market guineas, we show two males or two females again in there, and we can show any of the colors. The most common we see are pearls, pearl guineas. That's what we usually see. Uh, we don't see a lot of guineas. If you've ever raised guineas, you know they're pretty flighty, and a lot of people don't like all that activity when it comes to showing. They're not the easiest to show, but if you work with them, they certainly can be tamed down and shown. Can you show peacocks? We don't have a peacock class unless your county has a show and hobby class. If you have a show and hobby class, then you could take and bring peacocks, but they can't be shown at the state fair. Pigeons. Pigeons is a great project. Also, they have a separate trip from the rest of the poultry project. They have their own trips, so uh, you can actually get a different. You're not competing with the chickens for trips to state fair with pigeons. You're competing against other pigeons. There's three classes of pigeons: the utilities, uh, and there's two classes in the utility: breeding pair and the young bird. The breeding pair, you show one male, one female of the same breed. Now, it's different than the chickens. It doesn't have to be the same color as pigeons are always kind of baffle me a little bit because you don't put the same colors together like you do with chickens to take and mate pigeons. Breeding pairs are a year old, and you get them from a breeder or you raise your own. You have to also make sure they have the official band on them that tells how old they are. There's a band you get from you can get them from different suppliers, but it has to be slipped on. I think it's something around a week old when the um, pigeon is about a week old. You have to slip the band on. It's a seamless band, and you have to have that band on there. Young birds are this year's hatch, and you can get them from a breeder or raise your own. Usually a lot of the pigeon people, they tend to raise their own pigeons, especially once they get going. Okay. There's flying pigeons, same thing. These are just different classes of pigeons. The pigeon breeds go into these three classes: utility, flying, and fancy. You Now, this is also another thing. There's certain breeds of pigeons that I guess they can go in either class. When it comes to pigeons, you really need to get into it with somebody that's experienced with pigeons. I don't have a lot of experience with pigeons. I'll tell you that right off. Um, but there are some people around that are very good with pigeons, and they can help you if you're really interested in pigeons. Okay. So we got flying, the fancy, and in each one of those classes, there's a breeding pair or a young bird that you can bring to the fair. Okay. All right. So that's all the different classes. Okay. Any quick questions on the different classes? A lot of counties only have one family or one person that shows pigeons, and they get an automatic trip pretty much. So it's great to have take the pigeon class. Uh, Vern is a good resource, especially for you guys up north. I see Vern's on here. He's more than willing to help you out. I know up there. Pheasants would fall into that show and hobby class. Oh, doves. I forgot doves. I'm sorry. I forgot the doves. I'm missing the doves. Thank you, Shelley. Doves is a new project. Doves are the same as the pigeons. You can show a breeding pair or you can show a young bird in doves, and they have their own project also. Okay, so and the kind of the cool thing about doves is they can actually be kept in the house. I know that we have a family in our county that that takes and has doves, and she keeps them in her bedroom. So it's kind kind of a cool project to do also. I don't know much about the Dove project, but if you're wondering about Dove projects, you can shoot me. I'll put my email address up here at the end here, and then you can shoot me an address, and I can get you a hold of somebody that's experienced with some doves if you're interested in doing the doves. Okay. All right, let's go on. Okay, what should you raise? Okay, these are some of the questions you need to ask yourself. We've talked about all the different projects now. There's a ton of them. We went through them fairly quickly. Now, the facilities. What do you need to take and raise? What do you have? Do you have a warm building? You know, if you're thinking of raising standard chickens, they have to get started pretty early in the year. Do you have a decent place to take and keep them warm? And if you don't, or even in March, you know, it's pretty cold yet. Um, so you have to kind of consider that. What kind of a building do I have? If you don't really have a place to keep young birds or birds until later in the year, maybe market chickens are good for you, or some waterfowl that you can hatch a little later on. They'll still be plenty big. Um, can you keep some birds in the house? I think most mothers can attest to this. Anybody who's raising standard chickens, at least, uh, they probably had chicks in the basement for way too long. I know we have chicks in the basement right now, and it's time that they find a place to go. So, so we want to take and consider those kind of things. How big? How big is your facility? How big is your building? You know, if you have a little shed that's 6 by 6, you're probably not going to raise 20 turkeys. Okay, it's just not big enough for that. But it might be plenty adequate for some pigeons, or maybe a few market birds, or maybe some bantams, something like that. So we need to take and consider that. With all the birds, the more space that they have, probably the easier it is to be able to get them into condition. As a general rule, a bantam, if you had 2 or 3 square feet per bird, you'd probably be okay. You'd be able to finish them out. Standard birds probably take about double that. Depends on what kind of standard bird they are. Laying chickens, probably that 2, 3 feet at a minimum. These are all very minimum type things. Uh, what do you need for space? Waterfowl takes a lot more space. They're just messy, so you need a lot more space for them. And a place for them to go outside is always makes it a lot easier. Okay. Next thing to consider is, what do you want out of them after the fair is done? That's what a lot of people kind of forget about, is what am I going to do with them once we've taken and raised them? Do you want eggs? If eggs is your big thing, maybe the egg production class is a good thing for you. If you want fried chicken, maybe the market class is a good thing. If you want Thanksgiving dinner, maybe raise some turkeys. Want some watchdogs? Watchdogs would be the guineas. Guineas are great watchdogs. Or geese are also great watchdogs. They'll let you know when something's in the yard that shouldn't be, um, that shouldn't be there. Lawn ornaments. Do you like just to look at your chickens? Then maybe some of the bantam breeding breeds might be a great thing for you to do. So kind of consider that. What is it that you want to do with these birds after you're done with them? Some of the other things that you should consider is the cost. You got the cost of the chicks, the cost of the feed, the cost of the bedding. Those are the main costs that are going to be involved in that. One of the nice things I think about the poultry project is you aren't going to have to go out and buy a $2,000 market chicken. It wouldn't do you any good. All the market chickens come from a hatchery. Everybody gets the same thing basically. They they cost about $1.50 each. You know, nobody's going to outspend each other in the market chicken class. So I really like that about the poultry project versus some of the other projects where it seems like money plays a big part of it. The feed is you can probably get that from your local feed store or a local elevator, or maybe one of the farm stores. You'll get some feed. We'll talk about feed here in a little bit. And bedding, I'd suggest most people probably use shavings for bedding. You can use other materials, but shavings tend to work um, probably most universally and easiest. The other thing to consider is the time. How much time do you have to how much time do you have to take care of your birds or to work with your birds. Chickens tend to take a little bit more time to tame them down and that kind of stuff. So you want lots of time with them. Guineas, you want to spend a lot of time with. Turkeys, you want to spend some time with, so you can handle those type of birds. So that's kind of I've kind of got them in three categories here. You have time just to feed and water them. Okay, feed and water them. Maybe more your market birds, that kind of stuff might go into that kind of a category. And lucky if I see them, that category, your waterfowl can kind of fall into that category. Waterfowl are pretty self-efficient. They don't need a lot of tame. Here's a question. How do you start taming guineas? You start the first day, just like with everything else. You want to handle them from day one. And the more you handle them, the tamer they'll be. You want to treat them um, gently and stuff, and they will tame down if you take and work with them from day one. But it does take time. It does take a lot of time to take and get those to settle down and to be trust you. Okay. All right. So consider that. Consider time as one of your things when you're talking about raising birds. Also, another thing that you should take into consideration is your age. Young 4-H'ers, I don't like to see a 9-year-old with a 30, 40-pound turkey trying to handle that. It's just not, it just doesn't, the turkey's as big as the kid is. So it's really, it's actually kind of dangerous. You get a big turkey flapping its wing, it's got a lot of power. So kind of match the project the with you, okay? A great starting bird would be like a Bantam cochins or something like that are really something. I mean, they're calm whether you work with them or not. They just don't have a lot of wildness to them. There's certain breeds that are like that are very calm and easy to handle. That they're great starter project for birds. Um, Market chickens can be a fairly decent starting project. They're a little bit bigger, but they tend not to be real wild and stuff like that. Next category, I hate it when they flap their wings. If you don't like a bird flapping its wings, guinea project probably isn't for you, or something like that. Or egg production, white egg layers may not be your cup of tea because they tend to be a little bit flightier type birds. And if nothing bothers you, that guinea project might be right up your alley. So kind of gauge what how you feel about the birds too when you take and do that. Okay. Somebody's asking about something being super expensive. Generally, looks like egg production maybe. Generally speaking, birds aren't super expensive. Um, Geese, our waterfowl are getting up around $8, $10 a piece from hatcheries. Um, but a lot of your breeders aren't charging any more than the hatcheries are to 4-H kids. So um, they're, I don't think expense um, should really take and stop. Hopefully, it doesn't stop anybody from raising birds. There are breeders, and myself, I just lease the birds out to the kids, and I just get some back in the fall when they're done. So there's no expense for the birds themselves when it comes to raising them. Okay, taking care of the little ones. All right, what do we need to do before we get our chicks or our ducklings and that kind of stuff? Prepare a warm area, a dry area for them to take and be there. So whether it's in your basement or in the garage, someplace where you can keep it warm, they're going to need it fairly warm when they first come. We want an area that we can, at least underneath the heat lamp or whatever, it'll be around the 90-degree area. If you use a heat lamp, be careful, use the lowest wattage bulb. They'll provide enough heat for that. I've got mine in the basement. I just use I use like I think I've got a 75-watt bulb in there. And that gives enough heat down in there. When I put them out in my brooder, all I have in there is a 13-watt fluorescent bulb. That's all they need to stay warm. It's my brooder pretty much self-heats itself once I get started with that. So just be careful with the heat lamps. They are extremely hot. Make sure that if you use a heat lamp, you use a bulb that's got a porcelain socket. Okay, the porcelain socket type heat lamps. Those can handle the heat. Any other type, you risk getting it too hot, and you may have. Well, I don't want anybody to burn their place down, so make sure you're using the proper equipment. Use bedding that's not slippery. We don't use newspapers. We don't want to use newspapers. We want to make sure that the young birds have good traction so that they don't slip their legs out and we get strata legs or something like that. Um, so we want to be careful with that. What I use for the day olds down in the basement, I use paper towels. You know, paper towels have got that kind of bumps to it and stuff, and chicks seem to have a good footing on that. So I use, and they're absorbent. They keep things pretty, keep their legs under them really well with those paper towels. So I use that for the first few days till they go out to the brooder. In my brooder, I actually have wire bottom in my brooder, so the poop just falls through. You want to get yourself a chick water of some sort. I've got a little picture here of a chick water. They're a couple dollars at the farm store. They're pretty inexpensive. You can usually just buy the base, and then you can just put like a pint jar on top of that also. And you want to get some chick starter. Now, whether you get medicated chick starter or unmedicated chick starter, that's up to you. The medication that's in the medicated chick starter is to help prevent coccidiosis. Coccidiosis is probably the most common disease that you'd have in your chicks. I don't remember if I have a slide on that, but coccidiosis is in the environment. It's everywhere. And once you have it on your plate, or once you've had an outbreak of it, you're probably going to have another outbreak of it. So then a medicated chick starter is probably your best bet. But if you don't want to use a medicated chick starter, there's no problem with that. I think I do have coccidiosis here coming up, and we'll talk about that. If I don't, I'll come back and talk to that also. Okay. So now the little ones. The little ones are here. Okay, they're here. I don't know if you all know this, but you can get your chicks at the post office. They'll come in the mail. Okay, and when you order from a hatchery, that's most likely how they're gonna come to you. They're gonna come in the mail. If you know that they're coming, I always call the post office and say, hey, I've got chicks coming. They should be here this week. Could you just give me a call when they arrive, and I'll run in and pick them up. It's always best to get them as soon as you can and get them home and get them warm and get them started on their food and water. So. And most post offices are more than happy to take and do that for you. So that's one thing that I always did and I think helps assure that they get to you quickly and healthy. Okay, when you get them, have your water there. Dip their beak or bill into the water when you first put them into the pen. Okay, that just gives them a little quick shot of water. You can put a little bit of sugar in there. I don't usually do that, but I know some people do put a little sugar in there, or they'll put some electrolytes or some things like that into the water. I just found plain water usually works fine, but sprinkle some feed on the floor the first day. I don't usually, I'll put the feeder in there, but I'll sprinkle some on the floor just so that they're curious and they start picking around and start start eating. Okay. And watch for signs that they're too hot or too cold. If they're all huddled right underneath your heat lamp or your heat source, it's too cold. You need to either lower it or do something to raise that temperature up. If they're all spread out trying to get away from your heat source, then it's too cold. I mean, it's too hot, and you need to take and lower the temperature by either raising the heat lamp up a little bit or doing something else to take and cool it down a little bit. What you'd like is just for them to be nicely distributed around the area. You don't want them all clumped together, and you don't want them all trying to get away because it's too hot. And they're puffing. They might even be puffing if it's too hot. So that's kind of the first day. You just want to get them in there warmed up, get them drinking, and get them eating. They're usually pretty self-sufficient at doing that, provided that they haven't been on the road for a week or something like that. You know, chicks have all the food that they need when they hatch for a good 3 days in that egg yolk that they absorb just before they hatch. So they usually have plenty of nutrients, plenty of everything they need in the shipping process. It's only if something happens in the shipping process that we tend to have a little bit weaker chicks when they get get there, which hopefully doesn't happen very often. The first 6 weeks, you can lower the temperature by about 5 degrees per week, or raise the heat lamp a little bit each week, kind of cool it down. Here's the coccidiosis in chickens. It's a problem. If you see blood in the stool, droopy or dead chicks, uh, odds are it's coccidiosis. It doesn't mean it's 100% coccidiosis, but odds are pretty great that it is. Also, if you get feathers that are not laying, they're kind of all every direction as they start feathering out, unless you're raising frizzles, that's also maybe a sign of coccidiosis. Blood in stool is a dead giveaway. If you see a little bit of blood in there, that's a dead giveaway. It's coccidiosis. And you can medicate with cord or Ambrotell. You can usually pick that up at a farm store, and it's really a pretty cheap medication. I just keep a pint of it on hand. I think a pint cost me $12 or something like that at the local farm store. It's not very expensive. So feed starter generally for 4 to 6 weeks. I don't get real picky about the starter. I always just say feed your starter until your bag is empty. You know, if you've got 10 chicks and you got a 50-pound bag of chick starter, well, don't just switch because they're 4 weeks old or 6 weeks old. Go ahead and finish out your bag. Don't waste that feed. It's not going to hurt them or anything like that. But just generally speaking, in that 4 to 6 weeks, you can switch from a starter to a grower. This is probably the biggest one. Keep them clean and keep them dry. Okay, keep them clean and keep them dry. There's nothing that'll get your chicks sick faster than having a wet pen. Okay, or your ducks. The ducks are always a challenge to keep dry. Geese, waterfowl, they're always a challenge. But keep them clean and dry. That'll help almost all disease problems or any problems that you have. Is keep them clean and dry, and then make sure that they have enough space. We don't want to crowd them up too tight. We want to have plenty of room for them to take and move around. If the pen gets very dirty, within a day, you probably got them a little too tight. You probably need a little bit more space. You shouldn't have to take and clean a pen every day because they're getting too much manure and stuff in there. You probably need a little bit more space. Okay. All right, let's see. Don't let waterfowl swim that first. You don't want the waterfowl, and everybody thinks the ducks need some place to swim. You don't want them to swim. It's very easy for a duckling to take and get wet and can't dry themselves out. They don't have the oils, they don't have the feathers, the down to keep that way. They get chilled. So we don't want them to swim, have access to water to swim in until they're feathered. We want them to be feathered first. Okay. Handle birds. If you handle them from day one, chicks will imprint, or ducklings, all birds will imprint on pretty much that first big thing that they come in contact to. So if you treat them nicely and you work with them, you'll be mom. Okay, so handle your birds from the start and try to be around them a lot, and they'll treat you just like you are their mother. So that's really probably the biggest thing in taming them. The taming part really comes early with chickens and all birds. The more you handle them when they're younger, the better off you'll be. Okay. You can allow them to go outside once they're feathered or the weather is warm. If you got an 80-degree day and you got young chicks and you got a secure pen, there's no reason to not let them outside. And once they're feathered, they can take some pretty decent weather, or cold. Hopefully it's warm by the time they get feathered, but in Minnesota, you never know. Protect from predators, especially the family dog. Everybody, when I'm judging fairs, if there's a tragedy about something killing all the birds, 90% of the time it's the family dog that's done it. Even though they thought the family dog was going to be just fine with them, it's the family dog that's done it. And we have that problem too. We have our dog. She seems to be just fine, but every once in a while I'll find a call duck dead, and she's got it. And I know it's her. So I have to make sure that our call ducks are away from her. We had another dog. We raised border collies, and we had another female that she was fine with the poultry unless she had pups. And when she had pups, she'd start killing anything and everything. felt she had to feed them to her pups, so we always had to keep her locked away. So um, the dog is a big problem. Cats generally, once the birds get feathered a little bit, cats generally don't bother. Um, Chicks, the very little chicks, a cat might bother, but seems like once they get a little bit of size to them, cats don't have. I haven't heard any problems with cats, although I'm sure there's an exception out there. Okay, from 6 to 10 weeks old, um, we want to take and switch to a grower feed. Generally, your feed store will have a starter or grower, and then like a maintenance type feed or a layer feed or something like that for later on. So you probably want to switch to a grower feed. It's probably a little lower in protein than what the starter was. You can allow them outside. We want to be careful of sun with some chickens. Okay, especially the white birds, the buff birds. They tend to get I lost the word, brassy. The, the sun can kind of yellow the feathers or bleach the feathers out. It's kind of like you probably all know kids that during the winter time they kind of have dark hair. They go outside in the summertime and they turn blonde. Well, it's the same sort of thing can happen to the chickens. The the feathers can kind of get brassy. So we want to be careful that real hot sun. It can turn those feathers kind of brassy on them. So what I do is I have shade cloth over my pen, so it cuts a lot of the sun out. I used to just let birds out in the morning, bring them back in about 10 o'clock, and then let them out in the evening again um, when I didn't have that kind of a situation. So that will take in that it wasn't that real hot sun that they were getting. But they do need some sun to help give them some color and that kind of stuff. Keep the pen clean, lots of fresh water. Water is probably more important than the feed. I don't want to say don't feed them, but keep, keeping good fresh water in front of them. What colors fade the worst? I think the buffs are they fade pretty badly. And the whites, a lot of the whites will turn kind of brassy. Although I think that makes a difference as to the breeding behind some of the whites, what's in there. Okay, broilers, they may be ready to butcher in 8 to 10 weeks. Depending on what size you want to take and get them to, they may be ready to butcher before that. Depends on what size of bird that you want to take and have. And also continue handling your birds. In weeks 11 through 14, separate the males from the females. This is probably one of the biggest problems I see. The males start maturing, and then they start trying to mate the females, and then the females get all roughed up, feathers get broken, feathers get pulled out of their necks, and that kind of stuff. So we want to separate the males from females. You may need to even separate the males individually. It depends on the breed and the breeding behind them. Some breeds or some matings or lines of birds, you can't have two males in the same pen without them fighting with each other. So you kind of got to pin them up in order to get a decent finish on them. You'll continue with your grower, continue handling, and start practicing your showmanship. And showmanship is knowledge of your birds. Make sure you know what you're feeding your birds, that kind of stuff. And hopefully I'll maybe do something on showmanship later on if we think this is useful. We'll probably come up with something for showmanship and getting ready for the fair later on. Then getting ready for the fair, 6 to 8 weeks before the fair, check for mites and lice. Generally aren't a big problem on young birds, but if you have, if they can get out with the wild birds and stuff like that, you may have some mites or lice problem. Look around the vent area. The vent is where they poop from. Look in that area, you'll see little bugs crawling around. If you have them, you can use some garden powders or something like that something like seven garden powder. Sprinkle some of that on them, and they'll kill those off. Do that every week or so, and you'll keep the mites down. Look for broken feathers, mainly in the wings at this time. If you find a broken feather in a wing, pull that feather out. It should grow back in 6 to 8 weeks for the fair. Make sure that you get your fair entry in on time, and make sure that you have your health papers. And those are that statement of origin that you get from the hatchery or the breeder. Maybe give you a copy of their polarum slip, or they would give you a statement of origin also. that you can get. Or if you raised your own birds, you have to get your birds tested for polarium typhoid, which if you contact the state, if you don't know of anybody in your area, you can contact the state testing lab in Wilmer, and they can tell you who is able to do that in your area. Okay, 2 or 3 days before the fair, again, check for mites and lice. We don't want to take that to the fair with us. Pick out your pins. Again, if you're looking for uniformity in your pin, so your 2 females or your 2 males would take and want them to match the best that you could possibly get them to match. When you're doing breeding pins, you want the 2 females to match the best that they could. You're going to wash your birds, and we'll maybe put something out about washing birds also. Make sure that when you wash them, make sure you put them back into a clean pen. I get this also. People wash the birds and put them back in the same pen. That's kind of dirty, and the birds are dirty again. The evening before your entry day at your fair, I tell everybody to take the feed away. It kind of lets the bird clean out overnight, and that way when you take them to the fair, they're not pooping in their pen as they go, and generally have a better chance of keeping them clean. Okay, and that is what I have for the formal type of presentation. Okay, now I'll try to answer some questions if you have questions as they come through. I'm sorry I haven't been really doing the questions. Every time I look over, they're all going by so fast. I haven't been able to catch many of them. So let's see here if we can answer any questions here. You really can't protect them from mites and lice. All you can do is use a little bit of powder on them or something like that. So that's really about all you can do there. I don't know. I'd be afraid to use Raid on pigeons for mites. I don't know. That's probably an off-label type use. I personally use Frontline myself. Again, that's an off-label use. I can't tell people to use it, but I've had good success myself with it. I'd be leery about using Frontline like on market birds or anything like that you're going to take and eat. Okay. I'd also be leery about eating the eggs from birds that I gave Frontline to, because again, it's an off-label use. You're welcome. Vern, can you put up an email address for you? You're a good source, especially for those up north. If you wouldn't mind just putting in some way for people to contact you. Vern's also very, he's a great 4-H supporter. He can probably help you locate birds and stuff too if you're looking for them from breeders. Seabright Bantams, we'd have to look at that. I could maybe help you with that later. Let's see. Okay, Vern just threw his email in there. I'm going to put my email in here too for those of you that maybe want to take and get going. There we go. And on Facebook, if anybody want to join our farm on Facebook, you just search for Dobbins Creek Farm on Facebook. You can also get a hold of us there. So they're going by real quick. What's the best way to clean a chicken? Again, that gets into washing birds. Generally you'll use 3 tubs of water. You'll take the first tub would have in a mild detergent in it, like something like a Dawn dish soap or something like that. You would wash them. The second tub would have some water, probably with a little bit of vinegar in there to kind of rinse them off, and then a third of just a clean rinse to take and rinse them the third way. It'd take a while to explain the whole process, but that's the basis of the process of washing chickens. I think we'll do a washing type thing. Maybe I'll put that out as a video or something, and have it available for people to watch online. Okay. Fray rolls, are more of a breeding class chicken than an egg class chicken. They're not going to compete real well with the hybrids. I mean, for those of you that are raising purebred chickens, it's fine to bring some of your extra females for the egg production. Just realize they're probably not going to be competitive as far as winning the class. And depending on the judge, some judges will give red ribbons to some of the purebred birds. Others will give you a blue for if they're taken care of well, but they won't be considered for class champions. Okay. Be careful of using Vaseline. Vaseline's kind of sticky. Sometimes I've seen that where it's not put, or it gets all over and then dust and stuff sticks to it and it kind of doesn't do a real nice job. Okay. If you check my Facebook page that I gave you earlier, the Dobbins Creek on Facebook, I'll post it up there where the presentation is going to be saved at or being located at so you can view it. Okay. Yes, if you want to compete in the different categories, you need different type of chickens that are specific for those different categories. Like you need a Cornish Rock if you're going to compete well in the market class. You need a purebred chicken if you're going to compete in the purebred class or the breeding classes. And you need a good egg layer to really compete in the egg laying class. I agree, VetRx is really the best thing to put on combs and stuff. Doesn't leave any residue. It really shines them up nice. You can pick that up at a lot of farm stores are carrying it now, but you can also order it online. Okay. Ooh, Egyptian geese. That's a good one. I'd have to do some looking for Egyptian geese. If you could shoot me an email about that, I could look at that a little later. Let's see. If I'm going to put this back up. If you didn't sign up earlier or you came in a little bit later, if you wouldn't mind adding your name and your county in there, that would be helpful. Thank you. Let's see here. How much? There is no. Okay. Yeah, there's not a lot of information out there. The Hutchinson Show is a good place to go if you want to take and find breeding chickens or you want to just see every kind of chicken. It's the fourth Saturday in October. If you really want to see a lot of chickens, there's usually 2,400 birds or so at the Hutchinson Show. They're good places to take and see. Okay. The Swedish flower hens, you can use them in breeding class, but they can't go to the state fair because they're not a standard chicken that's recognized by the American Poultry Association. All your standard breeding birds have to be birds that are recognized by the American Poultry Association to take and go to the state fair. Sometimes a few do get up there because maybe the judge isn't real knowledgeable about that, but at the state fair, they'll definitely have to be recognized, even get a blue ribbon at the state fair. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think you're talking about Urchas probably. Urchas have some good birds. They're probably a step above. They're a step above of a hatchery type bird, and some of their birds are really good, and some of them are a little different. Okay. All right. I'll try to get that email. If not, get my email. I'll put my email on here again. Get my email and shoot me a question. Uh, there is a breed standard book, yes. It's called the, if you just search for the American Poultry Association, you can actually order it on there. Or your county, hopefully your county has one that you can take a look at. Okay. The breeder, if you look right above the chat window, there's two files there that you can download. The breeder list has a list of breeders. These are purebred breeders uh, that you can get breeding birds from or are willing to help 4-Hers out. And most of them are more than willing to talk to you. Even if they don't have the bird maybe you're looking for, they can probably help you find the bird that you're looking for. Okay. It won't let you download the files. Wonder what the deal is that. That would probably be a firewall thing on your computer, I would guess. Okay. All right. I can't see the breeders. Well, here I can bring the list up onto the screen. Let me do that quick. You know what? It might be pop-ups. It looks like this comes up as a pop-up. So if you're blocking pop-ups, it's possible that it's not allowing you to download. I think that might be what's happening. But I'll put that list on here. I know there's probably more than that. I don't. Bern, you need to get your name on there with Adrian. Just tell Adrian that if you're willing, and he'll put your name on there. You can get the standard perfection. Probably the easiest way to get it is to search for the American Poultry Association on the web, and then you can download it, or you can order it right there from them. Okay. Oh, I suppose it's on Amazon. I never looked on Amazon for it. Uh, you know that the breeding thing is some people will be hatching just fine and others will be struggling. I know we're hatching like crazy right now. We got more standard Orpingtons than I know what to do with. Vern, your hens are very fertile. So it's all going to take, and yeah, Eward is a great place for waterfowl. But you know, recognize though that these people that are on this breeders list, they're all breeders and they're not hatcheries. They don't have hundreds and hundreds of chicks. Um, so they generally have a fairly limited supply, and if you've ever tried to hatch chicks, you know that sometimes they hatch like crazy, and the next time you get nothing. So um, there is a new standard out. Really, the any version is going to do you pretty good. Just so the newest breeds are not in there, or the newest recognized varieties are not in the older versions. But otherwise, most of the standard breeds that have been around forever are in there, and nothing really changes with them. Yeah, chicks. You should be able to get chicks shipped from hatcheries. There's a minimum order, I'm sure. So generally it's 25 this time of year, especially to get chicks. You know, and a lot of hatcheries are good enough to kind of look at the weather too, so they don't ship you chicks when they're when it's 25 below out. Okay. How can you tell if a rooster is fertile? See if their eggs are fertile. It's really about the only way. Okay, what kind of the requirements are for doves? Um, really, just that they're doves. They should be a breed. You should know what breed they are. Uh, Other than that, you show either an old pair or a young dove in the dove class. If you want information about doves, if you could fire me an email, I'll get you in touch with somebody here in our county that's raised doves. She's won the state fair the last couple of years. Okay. A broody rooster? What is a broody rooster? Can you go to the auction with Leghorns? I don't know about that. Silver lace Wyandottes work well in the breeding class. I've never had a rooster who wants to sit on eggs. Can you auction breeding birds? Are you talking about like the ribbon auctions? Oh, maybe that's what you're talking about is ribbon auctions here with the auctions, I bet. Okay, the ribbon auctions are going to vary from county to county. There is no ribbon auction for poultry at the state fair. If your county does allow ribbon auctions, most of the time it's for the market birds. Although I think some counties are pretty wide open as to what they allow into the auction. But you'll have to check with each individual county because I know it changes from county to county. As far as laying the first eggs, if they're laying the first eggs a week before the fair, that's fine. What we don't want is, I don't know when your fair is, but we don't want them to lay um, for more than probably 3, 4 weeks at the most by the time they get to the state fair. Giant Canadas for a breeding pen of geese. I think Canadians are in the standard. I'm pretty sure they are. Let me just check real quick. Yeah, Canadian geese are in the standard. Now, I don't know. I have no idea, though, about any kind of regulations or anything about keeping Canadian geese. You're going to have to check on that itself. Okay. So you'd be good showing Canadian geese, provided everything's legal otherwise to do it. Swans. Swans would have to be in a show and hobby class. If your county has a show and hobby class, they wouldn't be eligible to go to state fair. Same goes for pheasants. How can you tell the difference between good and bad eggs? One way is to candle them. Candle them, if you put a light in, you can look inside the egg. Brown egg layers, the red sex links, the black sex links, any of the hybrided brown egg layers should do fine for brown egg laying. The chicks do have to be hatched the year of the county fair. The only exception to that is the breeding pair of pigeons and breeding doves can be over a year old. Buff Orpingtons would best be in the breeding classes. I'm not sure what that was about. I'm not sure what Rose. I missed something with Rose there. I don't think there is any best kind of chicken. There's certainly chickens that are best for particular classes, but raise what you like to raise, especially in the breeding classes. The breeding classes, they all should be judged against that standard of perfection, and the ones that come close to that standard of perfection should be the ones that take and win. Okay. Um, if you look at if you download that file with the intro to 4-H poultry, it has some suggested dates in there. Now, I personally, when I judge, I I judge the birds as they are at the county fair, but then when it comes to picking state fair, I look at what they're going to be like or what they should be like at that point in time. So if your egg layers are a little bit young yet at your county fair, I take that in consideration, and I'll probably put them in the lineup for like the state fair, but they may not win that day at the county fair. A little more mature pen might win at the county fair, but then they may not go to state fair because they'll be way overdone by the time state fair comes along. So I guess it depends on your goals as far as how mature you want them at your county fair. And you also kind of got to get to know some of the judges a little bit too. Do judges give any points if you incubated your own versus bought? Oh, what was on that? Um, they might in like the showmanship class. They might. And if two pens are close, I would generally go with the person that bred their own in the class. Can you take meat off of a layer? Yeah, you can butcher layer birds. Once they lay, they're going to be tough. I mean, they're going to be soup is basically all a layer bird is done once it gets old enough like that. Okay. Yeah, you can do the barbecue contest at State Fair. Um, if you want information on doves, why don't you send me an email? I'll throw it on here again, and I will try to find. I'll forward it on to somebody that knows stuff about doves. Okay. Okay. Holding a bird, you put your hand underneath, support the breastbone should be on your hand and on your forearm. You should have a finger or two between the legs. So it would be kind of like that football. When you take it and show it, display it for showmanship, you'll bring it out in front of you to show it. I think we'll try to do something for the showmanship and stuff. So we'll try to have more on that. Okay. Yeah, if you got somebody that knows stuff about doves, if you wouldn't mind putting it on here, that'd be great. Well, the birds that you get from a hatchery, it's all going to be depend on the quality that they are. Um, Most of the time, the birds that come from a hatchery, though, are not really good breeding quality, although sometimes you get lucky. Some hatcheries, Murray McMurray is a good example. They're a great source for people starting out, and it's kind of like playing lottery. Every once in a while, we'll see stuff come from Murray McMurray that's top-notch stuff, and other times you can't hardly recognize the breed. So it's always it's kind of a, it's kind of like playing the lottery when with hatcheries and breeding birds. Where should you get your chickens? It depends on which class it is. If it's breeding birds, you can get them from a hatchery, but if you know what you want, and you've been doing it for a little bit, you might want to go to the list that's on the sheet, or but if it's any of the market classes or the egg classes, get them from a hatchery. And really, the hatchery, I'm not going to recommend one hatchery over another. A lot of times, all the breeders are pretty much come from the same place anyway. So, um, okay, I will. I'll try to get those emails, but don't take it for gospel. I'm going to get those. You'd be better off taking mine and sending me an email. I'm not sure what happens to all this when I shut this meeting thing down, so I don't usually use this system. Okay. Well, you're all welcome. I'll stay on here for a few more minutes here. Okay, I'll put my email in here again. I should have had that at the inside. I'll know that better next time. Okay, and I also put, if you search for this, if you search for that, I'll put a link on on our farm's Facebook page to where the recording is also. So if you want to check there, you can find that out. For pigeons, really the best resource for pigeons would be if we could talk to Don Roscoe. Is Don Roscoe on our list here? No, he's not. Don Roscoe. Is Trevor on there? Give Trevor Known a call. He'd be a good source for pigeons, and he can help you find pigeons. And if he can't, just give me a shout, and I'll get you some other names too. But Trevor Noon, he's like the fifth one down, I think, on the list. He's a pretty good pigeon guy. He's a nice guy too. Got some nice chickens too. Should we? Really, all birds should be held the same way. You put your hand underneath, support them on your hand and on your forearm with a finger or two between the legs. And somebody said carrying it like a football. That's pretty much what it is, kind of like. And we handle all of our birds that way. I think Katrina's been trying to answer questions as we've been going along. I'd like to thank her. I'm glad she came in with me. Looks like the questions are slowing down. You won't get pigeons or doves from a hatchery, no. No. Generally speaking, you'll be buying growing birds when it comes to pigeons and doves. And they grow quickly. I mean, from the time a pigeon hatches, it's about a month and they're basically full grown. And they need their parents to take care of them. So you pretty much buy full grown birds. Yeah, I know that can be kind of confusing at the state fair. They tend to get judges that aren't from the state, so um, I know that can be kind of a problem, and I don't know what to do about that. I really don't. I know the judges I talk to, we try to be pretty consistent. We talk with each other and try to be consistent with what we um, tell people. But I know you get to the state fair, and sometimes people are shaking their heads, and it's us too. So it's just one of those things. You mix younger birds with older birds. You can. I probably wouldn't do it though until after the fair. ISA brown egg layers. Yep, that's the old red sex links. I think there was a copyright issue using the name, so some hatcheries started calling them ISAs or something like that. It's the sex link, or the red sex links, or the red stars. They're perfectly fine. They're a good Good brown egg layer. It's going to be as far as the pigeon stuff, all the birds. It's going to depend on the breeding behind them, the genetics, and how good they are. I mean, it's just it, it's like that with all the purebred birds, and you got birds that are birds, and then you got birds that are really bred to be what the standard calls for. And there is a standard for the pigeons too. I've got that. It's from the American Pigeon Association, I believe. Tells what the pigeons are supposed to look like. So yeah, black six links are fine. They're a good brown egg layer. That's just a policy of the fair as far as them keeping the eggs. And hatcheries tend not to have pigeons or doves. I think somebody said Stromberg. Stromberg is basically an agent for people. They they don't raise their own stuff. Yeah, our fair we keep all the eggs too. We don't hatch them, but we just give them to people to eat. There's nothing you can do to stop people from touching the chickens. Hopefully you can put up a little sign that says please do not touch or something, but people still do it. And pigeons can be found at swap meets. Chickens can be found at swap meets too. Just if you don't really know what you're looking with, though, you can end up with some real junk. But if you know what you're looking for, you can find some very nice stuff at swap meets. And it takes experience. Do you recommend transporting them? Ideally, you transport each individual chicken in its own compartment. That, that has the best chance of not getting dirty. Anytime you put more than one chicken in a compartment, you run the risk of one of them pooping on the other. Yeah, there are. The two big ones are New Ulm and Hutchinson. Hutchinson is the fourth Saturday in October every year. That's the biggest one. There'll be 2,400 birds there. New Ulm's a little smaller, probably 700 birds, and I think it's like the second weekend in November. They moved it. I think that's what it's pretty much running. Hatcheries, probably the most common, especially for probably the most common one for purebred birds, especially is Murray McMurray. There's not many shows during the summer. There's one just across the river. Oh, where is that one at? Oh, Galesville, Wisconsin. That's in June. That's about the only one I can think of fairly close to here. And there are some county fairs that have big open class poultry shows. You just kind of got to go to each one and find out. Now, for the most part, birds that come from hatcheries don't meet the standard really well. You can show in other county fairs in the open class shows. And you're right, some county fairs are much more competitive than others. I've judged some shows where the 10th place bird would have been a champion bird at other county fairs. So it seems like the quality tends to congregate in certain areas. All right, it looks like we maybe have pretty much got the questions taken care of here. All right, we got some more here. All right, I think we're going to wrap up this. I'm going to at least stop recording here. Okay. I stopped recording. Katrina, if you want to stop recording, hit F10 on the computer.